So I'm Susan Rudnicki. I have been a member of the beekeeping community for 7 years. I obtained my first bees in the method pretty closely to how I rescued Yamin's bees. In other words, a wild hive living in a structure that we cut out and place into human managed hive boxes. And this is the only way I've ever kept bees. I do not purchase bees from breeders. And I do not work with the commercial industry at all in any way to buy bees. So all my bees are wild bees, and I rescue bees in this way because I believe that they're very strong and resilient, and they don't need support from chemical treatments or drugs, and they live very well on their own, as testament by their living in walls like Yamin's for years and years without any help or coddling from humans. So in my estimation, those are the kinds of bees we want to keep, and in the 7 years I've been a beekeeper, the only kind that I have. I now have 44 of my own hives. I have client hives that are hives I manage for people who want to have bees and have honey, but they don't want to be beekeepers. I have students that I teach this model of beekeeping to, which is relatively hands-off from humans, very natural. I also speak on honeybee subjects to municipal authorities, schools, churches, service groups fairly often. I sell honey from my hives to restaurants and stores. A lot of my business is by word of mouth. In fact, almost all of it is word of mouth and referral. I live in Manhattan Beach, California. I keep most of my hives at 2 locations. One is at the Public Works Yard of Manhattan Beach, and the other is at my home. Since February of 2017, this year, I have hived 64 colonies of bees. Hiving means you catch a swarm and you put it into a small hive and grow it to a larger size. In my case, I have caught many swarms and I sell them to a farm up in Moore Park that has tree crops, stone fruit, avocado, citrus, flowers, all kinds of vegetables and fruits, and they need pollination service. So they are establishing a large apiary, which is a place where bees are kept, and they're using only my feral caught bees, wild caught bees, because of their resilience and ability to persist under trying conditions without coddling from humans. So that's one of my main income streams as well, is catching these swarms and selling the small hives to the farm. So I have a diversified income stream that helps me do beekeeping almost full time. I'm also a dental hygienist 1 day a week on Thursday. I've been a dental hygienist for 37 years. It's just the one thing that I still do is that 1 day on Thursday.
Wow. So Susan, can you explain to us what happened? Everybody has or will see the video.
Yeah.
And can you tell us the steps we went through?
Well, at some point in the past, bees were searching this neighborhood and saw a potential home site in the wall of Yamin's little cottage. There was probably a small hole there. So a swarm of bees moved in, and the cavity between the interior wall and the exterior wall is a perfect hiving or living space for wild bees. In the human environment, most of the natural world has been changed so much that there's now no longer big piles of rocks or caves or old trees for bees to move into. So they move into human structures a lot. And they've been living in Yamin's wall for, it looks like, a few years. There was some notion by the landlord that he could just pull them out with a vacuum. Once one sees the size of the structure that they built between the interior and exterior wall, however, it's pretty clear that this is something that would not yield to that kind of a remedy. So to transfer the bees from this place that's unacceptable to humans in the wall and into a wood hive box that we have developed for the keeping of bees and managing of bees, honeybees. I have to make that distinction. These are honeybees. They're Apis mellifera. There are many species of bees, but these are Apis mellifera. So we can transfer them, and their living structures, the combs, that are inside the wall into the managed wood hive box by carefully cutting pieces of the comb and framing them, putting them in the frames that hang down in the hive box, sort of like file folders hang in your file drawer. And there's 10 of those in each box. So we cut the pieces of comb to fit in the frames, retaining the combs with rubber band retention. The bees will very quickly repair all the damage. Within days they'll repair the damage that we made in cutting out their combs and putting them into the frames, and then we put them into the box. And we lure the bees into occupying a new home. So they want to go back into their old site, which is in the wall. And we have various ways of making it unpleasant for them. Spraying almond oil inside the old site. They don't like the smell of it, so they leave. I can use smoke, which I did do this morning, to make them break their resistance to leaving the old site. We've removed all their home. It's all inside the managed hive box now. It's just a matter of them learning that now the home has been moved over to another place.
Beautiful. And that took us
about 3 hours once we actually started working. We had about an hour of prep time, getting our cars parked and all that, and setting up our equipment. It takes a lot of equipment because the bees are, the flying bees, we don't want to step on them too much or have them get stuck in their honey that drips down. So I have a special soft suction bee vacuum. And the bees are sucked into this bee vacuum where they're kept safe and to the side with good ventilation until all the brood, the baby bees in the combs, have been put into a separate box. At the end of the procedure, those two units are put together and united. So the flying bees go up into the box with the baby bees, and they all become one happy family again.
Yay. So Susan, why do we want to do this? Why do we want to invest into saving the bees and the beehive as opposed to exterminating them?
There are negative, there are really definitely downsides to extermination, which is a pretty draconian response to bee colonies. If one sees from the video the size of that colony, the extent of it, the honey, the pupa, which are unhatched larvae, the wax, and the live bees, if we pump poison into the entrance hole and poison all those bees and all of the structure, it is left behind by exterminators. They don't clean that out. So what happens to it? Well, decomposers move in, rats, all kinds of decomposing bugs, but also without the service of the bees to keep the area at a moderate temperature, either cooler or warmer. Sun hitting the side of the building will melt all that structure left behind. So it will melt, it will decompose, it will rot, it will smell. This is not a good answer to the situation of a beehive living in your wall. The better answer is to move them into an acceptable place from an unacceptable place. So we are helping solve a perceived problem in human society, that we have insects, honeybees, living in places where we don't want them. But we also create problems for ourselves if we just go at it in a ham-fisted manner by applying poisons. And so I described to you all the things, unpleasant things that we're left with putting poison on the bees.
Thank you, Susan. And you will have her information and also her referrals to people that know how to do this, how to remove a colony and relocate it. Is there anything else, Susan, that you would like to add to your beautiful work? I have to say that she came back in the middle of the night yesterday because there were ants climbing on the new home, the box, and so she came in with some kind of paste that is called Tanglefoot.
It's an insect barrier that disallows the ants from getting up into the box by we set the box on its little four-legged stand, so it prevents any more intrusion from the ants. And every job is different. Parts of Los Angeles have huge populations of the exotic Argentine ant. Oh, sorry, it's an Argentine ant.
Don't be sorry.
And other places, I can leave the hive box all night and they won't be there and bother the bees. But the thing to know that when the bee's home has been essentially ripped apart like this and moved into something else, they are in great disorganization and chaos. And so if we don't help them by ameliorating pressure from marauding ants, the ants are marauding too. They're looking for easy food like honey, and they will eat the baby bees as well. They feed on the young pupa. If we don't help the bees by keeping these ants at bay until the bees have established themselves, then there's a chance of failure. The hive may fail entirely and leave. It's called absconding. They will abscond.
So this woman is the real deal. She was here with a red light, not to upset the bees, at the wee hour of the night, intending to protect them from the ants. So I'm very, thank you so very much, Susan.
It's been fun and interesting. If we just hadn't hit a water pipe.
Yes, we ran into some problems, which she also took care of by contracting this plumber that will arrive soon. And I'm very happy with what you've done. I'm very thankful.
And the bees are going in very well now. We had to get them a little bit more encouraged to, all of them to go in our new hive box. I would say 2/3 of them were in this morning, but there was still 1/3 very attached to their old home site, even though there's nothing in there anymore. So it's maybe like when you move and your kids keep wanting to go back and see their friends in the old neighborhood.
How many bees do you estimate was in that?
I would say there was at least 80,000 honeybees in that colony. It was very large.
Wow.
This is a very good thing, is when you recognize how could it get so big if it were not healthy. It can only reach that size if it's healthy, it has a good queen, and it knows how to live on its own, that's the kind of honeybee I want to keep. Unfortunately, the media is doing a very bad job of helping the public understand bee problems. There's a lot of hysteria in the media right now about the honeybees are dying. All the honeybees are dying. Some of them are endangered, etc., etc. The commercial Apis mellifera is having a lot of trouble. But those bees used in commercial pollination contracts, in industrial pollination of all kinds of crops that we get for our food, like fruit, cauliflower, strawberries, squash, blueberries, almonds, many tree fruits. Those bees that's all they do. They're not kept for honey, they're kept for their pollination service to a farmer that pays the owner of those bees a certain amount per hive. Now those bees are very genetically inbred, and they're very weak. They have to be propped up with treatments of chemicals and medications because their genetics is not diverse. This is getting a bit into the weeds on genes and genetics, but in honeybees is extremely important. It's just like, the analogy I would make is, for many people, they buy a purebred dog from a breeder, and they already know many times that certain breeds of dogs have certain genetic problems from being inbred. They may have hip problems or skin problems or respiratory problems. They have shortened lives many times because of these health issues. And this is caused by their genetic diversity not being very wide. But brothers are bred to sisters and mothers are bred to brothers, and this kind of inbreeding creates weaknesses that pop out and cause the organism, whether you're talking about a honeybee or a dog, it manifests in the same way. It manifests in a general lack of fitness. Lack of fitness. This is what we talk about in genetics. The diverse fitness and genetics of wild honeybees is superior to that of the industrial bees that are kept in these giant pollinator operations. Now, why would those guys want to keep those kinds of bees? They say it's because the bees are more docile to work with. But part of it is they are also supported by a breeding industry that feeds them their supply of honeybees from a breeding source. So it's like the guy who raises chickens for Tyson. He's part of a vertically integrated scheme. He's just one cog. The guy raising the chickens is just one cog in Tyson's business model. The industrial pollinator is buying his bees from a breeder that supplies that industry. And he doesn't really get a choice in what their genetics are because the breeder determines that. And the breeder is determined to make a uniform product, just like when you go to McDonald's, you know that burger is going to look a certain way, have a certain amount of ketchup on it, and a certain number of pickle slices on it. It's the uniformity of delivering a known product on a regular basis. And honey beekeeping on the commercial scale, when we're talking about thousands of hives owned by one person or one company, is a vertically integrated scheme in the same way.
Wow. Well, you will have the information for this woman and others that do follow on her line of work. And thank you so much, Susan. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
For all your help.
I went off on a tangent, but
it was not a tangent.
It is the problem, and that's why in the world of the honeybee, I had no idea when I started keeping honeybees. I thought, it's not going to be a political thing, is it? I never would have thought that it was political. But it is, because there's these two camps. The people who treat and the people who don't. They do not get anywhere near each other in terms of philosophy or talking to each other, and their dogmatic belief in their system just doesn't cross. The people who treat their bees say, you can't keep bees alive unless you treat them. They just say that. Never mind that I've been keeping them alive for 7 years without treating them. It's like religion. It's like a religious belief. It doesn't matter what the evidence shows. I just believe it. Anyway.
Okay. Thank you, Susan. And
are you filming that too?
Everything. Thank you very much, and thank you everybody. And here is the new adopter is
Joe here.
Joe, would you like to come over here? And this is the new adopter of that beehive. Hi, Joe. What are you planning to do with the beehive that is gonna go to you?
What do I plan on doing with it?
Yes.
Watching it grow.
Watching it grow from the 80,000 to the 80 million. Thank you, Joe, for accepting the beehive.
Thank you guys for giving it to me.
All right.